My name's Taylor Korn. I'm the Clean Cities Director at Kansas City Clean Cities and Metropolitan Energy Center. And thank you for joining us today for our electric school bus webinar. We are presenting on behalf of the World Resources Institute to help provide a little more insight into electric school buses and how they operate and why you should consider them. So a little background on Metropolitan Energy Center. We are a Kansas City area nonprofit that's been around for 40 years, working in the sustainability and energy efficiency space. We primarily focus on building performance and sustainable transportation projects that help push forward alternative fuels and electric vehicles to make them more commonplace and more accessible for folks across Kansas City and the Midwest and anywhere we're able to work with, quite frankly. We're also a part of the Clean Cities Coalition that I mentioned briefly at the beginning. It's a national network of cities that have joined forces to push together alternative fuels and, again, make those more commonplace and accessible for everyone in the nation. We work with different national agencies like the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Association, just to name a few, and we work with other smaller local organizations, governing bodies. We help to inform fleets and provide them with resources on how they can upgrade their fleets. And in this case, we're going to be talking about, school bus fleets and how we can potentially upgrade those and why that should be a consideration. We function primarily off of grant funding and sometimes privatized opportunities to put these projects in place, but we're always trying to help provide resources whenever we have the opportunity to do so. So jumping straight into the topic at hand, why electric school buses? Why do they matter? Why should we consider them? One fact right off the bat is how they have zero tailpipe emissions. They're going to produce less transportation pollution in the area's operation. This means cleaner air for communities and the different areas that they frequently operate in, whether that just be the routes or where the buses are stationed. They're going to be producing less toxins that are harmful for all humans to breathe, as well as the environment as a whole. Some of these chemicals that are in typical diesel buses can lead to asthma and more extreme health problems that we'll dive into a bit more later in the presentation. And again, these also attribute to global warming and climate change with the greenhouse gases that come off of these diesel buses. There's also some cost and operational benefits in terms of reduced fuel and maintenance savings costs, and there's also even a potential for generating income through the vehicle to grid capabilities that some of these school buses offer. And we will dive into all this in a little bit more detail throughout the presentation. So talking about the environmental impact, currently 90% of the school bus fleet in America, which is about 500,000 school buses, are operating through diesel fuel. And these are buses that are used on a frequent basis, every day, going to and from the schools, dropping off all the students on their daily routes. And every single day, they're releasing these harmful pollutants such as fine particulate matter, nitrogen oxides, and VOCs, or volatile organic compounds, which are pollutants that lead to asthma, like I mentioned before, other respiratory illnesses, and cognitive impairment, and in some extreme cases, even cancer. And we don't want that. They're also going to accelerate the effects of climate change just based off the greenhouse gases they're putting off. So they're not the best for health or environment. And that's one reason we really are trying to help schools understand the benefits of electric school buses as a whole and why it might be a good idea to consider them. So like I mentioned before, they produce zero tailpipe emissions, and this is going to lead to no harmful chemicals in communities and the environment as a whole. They have the lowest greenhouse gas footprint of any bus type, regardless of, or even accounting for the emissions that are generated from producing the electric school bus, that be the the battery and even some of the installation required for the charging stations, you need to support them. But this is just a little comparison between some of the factors between a typical diesel powered bus and an electric school bus, and how the ESBs are really focused on creating better health and environment for students, faculty, the communities at large. There's even some added benefits like they're quiet, there's less noise, so the driver doesn't have to be sitting in a very loud vehicle throughout the day. Again, we talked about those cost savings that come from maintenance, reduce operational costs, because once you set up the infrastructure, you're not going to be paying for gas like you do on a regular basis for diesel buses. So there's a lot of things to consider here, a lot of added benefits on why they might be right for your school district. And we're going to talk a bit more about how you might be able to get a hold of them later on in this presentation. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to my colleague, Bree, to talk a little bit more about the improved health benefits of electric school buses.
Thank you, Taylor. My name is Bree Murphy. I also work at Metropolitan Energy Center. And if you could go to the next slide. So electric school buses provide reduced asthma rates in students. Studies have shown a 20 to 30% reduction in lung inflammation in children with asthma and a 16% reduction in children without asthma. This leads to an 8% decrease in absenteeism due to fewer hospitalizations and better respiratory health. There has also been seen a $200,000 benefit in health costs avoided per electric school bus. And then next slide. Electric school buses also provide cleaner air in surrounding communities. There is cleaner air on buses and loading areas and in nearby neighborhoods. ESBs provide zero tailpipe emissions, which reduce exposure to harmful diesel pollution for students, drivers, and residents in the community. They also provide quieter streets and healthier air, especially in high pollution corridors that disproportionately impact underserved communities. And then I will turn it over to our other colleague, Drew, to talk about cost and operational considerations.
Thanks, Bree. Next slide, please. All right, so a big concern about ESBs, and it's a warranted one, is the cost. And we recognize that overall, they are more expensive than the conventional diesel fuel school buses. But what's important to note is that operational costs are tremendously reduced when it comes to that traditional vehicle medium. And so we find those operational costs reduced because of the lower maintenance and lower fuel costs over time. With the different engines, well, not having an engine compared to a battery, electric school buses are simply easier to maintain and have lower fuel costs, especially if a school district has ownership over their grid. Districts can save up to $7,000 a year on operational costs. And overall, this means that there's a lower total cost of ownership compared to diesel buses. So once again, the operational costs have a huge, immense benefit, even as the capital costs may be more expensive. So very much an investment. Next slide, please. The other potential for revenue comes from vehicle to grid. If you're unfamiliar, vehicle to grid is a practice in which school districts who have any capacity of ownership over their electrical grid can actually sell back their extra electricity to their community. So we have a couple instances of this. The first is in El Cajon, California, where they're making money from its extra electricity by selling it to local parts of their community, whether that's public or private sectors, and basically having an extra source of revenue. And also in Hood River, Oregon, because they have a microgrid, they can provide backup power to their buildings during emergencies or grid disruptions. So basically, even an extra benefit to this is having a backup source of power in addition to having a potential source for revenue. So many extra benefits that you wouldn't immediately think of when you think of ESBs, but could definitely be very helpful in times of emergency or in times of financial duress. Next slide. I think Taylor, this will be back to you to round us out.
Yeah, thank you both. To end things off, we're going to talk a bit more about how you can get a hold of electric school buses and some opportunities available to help incentivize the change. So there's quite a few common questions and concerns we've heard from school districts and other colleagues about kind of their concerns over the vehicles themselves. The range is a pretty common one. How far can an ESB travel on a single charge? It's typically between 120 to 150 miles of range on average. Depends on the model. There can be other factors like the weather, which we'll talk about in a second, but that's what you can typically expect to get. And depending on how you set up the buses, they're likely going to have a time to charge throughout the day and between the morning and afternoon routes. So you should be able to always have more than enough mileage to get all the students home or complete whatever other, routes you need to with the buses. Charging needs are kind of a case-by-case basis. It depends on whether or not your school district owns your own buses, if you house them on your property, or if they're stationed somewhere else. Every school is a little different, but regardless, wherever they spend the most time, they're going to need to have the charging stations set up in order to properly charge them and make sure they're always ready to go throughout the day. And these are going to come in the form of level 3 or DCFC, direct current fast charging stations, which will make sure the buses charge in a very efficient manner. And again, this kind of is all dependent on how many buses you have, where they're located. So that's something through MEC, if you have any interest in transitioning to buses, we can kind of help you put together a plan depending on what your needs are. When it comes to weather performance, how do electric buses handle extreme cold or hot conditions? When it's hot, there's not really much of a change as long as you have proper air conditioning on board. There shouldn't really be a drastic difference in the mileage or range, but when it comes to the cold, they can be a little less effective in their performance. Depending on the weather, you can expect a typical loss of mileage from 20 to 30 miles, some cases more extreme depending on how cold it is, but that's just due to the fact that sometimes the batteries have to work a little harder in the cold to get the same range that they would on a more moderate temperature day. So these are, again, some common concerns we've heard before. When it comes to funding support and additional resources, there's programs such as the EPA Clean School Bus Program, which is a large pool of money that has been reserved for transitioning diesel buses and diesel fleets to electric school buses nationwide. There's money reserved for each state and is still available. The current administration has not released the funds. They've kind of paused them, but this is going to be a big pool that's available to help transition school districts once it comes back online. And like we said, it's still reserved for this this purpose of transitioning to electric school buses. So that should be a very big help for most districts to kind of curb the cost of transitioning to electric school buses. There's also always state, utility, and regional incentives. There's even some cities that offer specialized funding to encourage the transition to electric vehicles. You just need to check with your local legislators and lawmakers and check whatever sites you look at for grant and funding opportunities to see what local funding resources might be available in your respective region. There's technical assistance from organizations like ourselves here at Metropolitan Energy Center and the World Resources Institute, who put together this whole cohort we're doing. We're not the only organization giving presentations like this. It ties back into that Clean Cities Coalition thing. A ton of different cities across the US are helping educate school districts and other folks interested about electric school buses over the next few months in this cohort to help kind of bring more education and knowledge about this particular topic. And there's also a rebate program available from Evergy where you can get reimbursed some of your funds for transitioning. And we have a representative, Julie, who is going to be talking about that in a bit later on in this presentation. So these are some funding opportunities that are currently available, and there may be more that come online as we continue moving forward. That's about it for our portion of the presentation. If you have any questions, feel free. We're going to take a few minutes to answer questions before we transition into Bluebird's presentation. But again, my name is Taylor Korn, I'm the Clean Cities Director, and Drew and Bree are program coordinators at Metropolitan Energy Center. Feel free to take down our contact information if you think of anything after the fact, and we'll take a sec to see if any questions come through.
If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat. Meanwhile, we do have a couple of frequently asked questions. The first one is, I'm interested in electric school buses, but I would love to see one in person and possibly test drive one before moving forward. Is there any event or location where I could test drive an ESB?
Yeah, we are planning an event in the future, actually, where we'll be able to have a ride and drive with some electric school buses. So definitely keep up to date with our resources and to make sure you're informed of when that opportunity comes up. In addition to that, our Bluebird representative, who helps produce the electric school buses himself, mentioned that he is happy to bring buses to districts to show them off and allow folks to test them out. And I'm sure Brad would be happy to talk about that a little more once we get to his segment. But yeah, so there's plenty of opportunities available to actually experience what they're like.
I'll also add, you can follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletters to stay up to date on any upcoming events. Our social media is Metropolitan Energy Center or Metro Energy KC, and you can sign up for a newsletter at metroenergy.org/newsletters. Our next question is, have ESBs already been implemented in the country?
Yeah, a large percentage is starting to be implemented, about 10% of the fleet. So we have 5,000 buses currently deployed throughout the US, and there's roughly 5,000 more that are awaiting deployment, just waiting on some infrastructure to be set up. But this is across the nation, which doesn't sound like a whole lot, but it's a great step forward to sizing down the diesel school bus fleet, and it's allowing more than 270,000 students to ride on clean electric school buses every day, which is significant for their health and their communities. So it's a great step forward. And 10 million students attend a school in a district with at least one ESB is another stat that we've kind of gathered. So they're out there, and some states have made more of a push to get them, and we're hoping that everyone follows suit. Well, we will go ahead and transition into Brad's presentation at Bluebird. So I'm just gonna go ahead and jump into it. And Brad, when you're ready, come off mute and I'll keep navigating the slides for you.
Thank you, Taylor, Drew, Bree, and Kelly. I'm Brad Beauchamp. I'm the EV product segment leader at Bluebird. We will be 100 years old next year, so that's something we're excited and preparing for. And I'm going to give you an electric bus overview. It was teed up so well through WRI and all the benefits of electric school buses. I will cover some of that, but I'm also going to expand on it with what's actually happening as as we're rolling out through the marketplace. And we're actually sitting at a significant milestone. 8 years ago, we deployed in this generation our first wave of electric buses that have been continuing the last 8 years. So roll me forward here. And with Bluebird, we're no stranger to electric school buses. In conjunction with Westinghouse, like a lot of manufacturers in the mid-90s, and I happened to be with one at the time that did the EV1 electric S10 at that same time period. There were a lot of efforts after the Energy Policy Act passed in 92, 93 to get some zero emissions examples out there, which is primarily battery electrics and those electric vehicles powered by fuel cell. With us in 94 through 96, we produced, in conjunction with Westinghouse, a number of buses that not only ran in school districts' hands, but also ran in the Olympics in Atlanta in 96. And it was really a test bed. Roll to the 7 going on 8 years here, milestone that we're hitting, and it became more real. The batteries and the ability for the power the battery produced and the actual bus itself and the electronics around it were able to actually truly run routes. We are aimed at, and it was mentioned, you can go 120 to 150 miles of range in an electric school bus. We're aimed at routes that are 100 miles a day or less, which, believe it or not, is more than 80% of all the routes in the United States. The EPA Clean School Bus Program has provided learning since 2021 when it launched. These buses are deployed in urban, suburban, and rural areas, so they're running a little bit of everywhere, all geographies and climates. And we're at the point now, after 8 years, where even some long routes and trips can be managed. They're a challenge because of charging infrastructure, but we're starting to work and handhold those that want to use the electric school bus as their student activity bus as well, going on trips for sporting events and museums and other activities for other clubs in their districts. Roll me forward. So we are deployed in 41 of the US states and 4 of the Canadian provinces. For school bus, it's primarily the US and Canada that are fairly uniform. And with that, we've actually been able to keep the traditional features that the districts and contractors are expecting and still provide an electric bus. So this is not a dramatically or drastically different experience than if you switch from diesel to gasoline or diesel to propane or diesel to compressed natural gas. Electric's just one of those in our portfolio. And at Bluebird, we concentrate on all the fuels. We did sunset from 91 till 2024 the CNG product, mainly because there weren't engines available, but we still support the 91 through 2024 CNG products that are out there, and there's many running on that fuel, and we have the ability to keep those going. Was mentioned 5,000 of these out there. There's another 5,000 that are still in order and process. We're 3,500 of those today. 2,700 of those are running in the U.S. And as was mentioned, these are vehicle to grid or vehicle to building or vehicle to load capable. So the buses can actually be sitting there as an energy storage unit, and with the correct charger can actually export energy when needed, which is a great application for school bus. EV and school bus were meant to be together. And again, 40% of nearly all the deployments out there of the manufacturers that are producing electric school buses. There have been many great learnings over the course. Roll me forward, and we are in our 3rd generation of battery for our EV school bus over the last 8 years. And I will oversimplify it by saying we are continuing to pick up energy and lose weight. So much so that in the current generation, the BP97, a bus with a half a tank of diesel fuel or gasoline in it weighs about the same as an electric bus. So the myth that the electric vehicle is a lot heavier in the case of school bus has it's played out here today. You really have the same weight of the bus itself. Again, we're concentrating on routes that are 100 miles a day or less, which is again 80+%, and we're able to accomplish that with this Generation 3 battery in all weather conditions. So whether it's extremely hot, extremely cold, or temperate, whether you're in the mountains or you're driving the flat land, we're we're able to provide you something year round that can make that happen. Next slide. This is the battery that gets us up to 150, and I say up to because that's going to depend upon the vehicle build type. Again, we're centering around 100 miles of range. It can charge up to 120 kilowatt input. While most districts do not, they're using AC or lower level DC charging. Certainly if you were using it for a trip application and you had a DC fast charger capable of producing 120 kilowatt or more, that means that you can actually charge this vehicle from empty to full in less than 2 hours, an hour and a half and change. And we're on the new for V2G 15118 ISO 20 protocol, which came out in 2022, has much more cyber secure elements to it for utilities that really want to use this as part of their microgrid or even just feeding energy back to the grid. And this is our standard battery on all of our Type C and Type D school bus products, or the Vision and All-American product. Next slide. So when we're out there, as I'm actually doing today, believe it or not, training districts and as they're adapting to electrics, the body remains the same. So if you have Bluebird school buses or you have a competitive manufacturer, all those items that you typically order on your school bus for the body, radios, camera systems, the functioning of the actual bus itself, they're all available. So it's kind of plug and play. The same thing applies to the chassis, the air brakes, the wheels, the tires, the suspension, hydraulic brakes, how the power steering takes place. It's all the same on the electric bus that it is on a conventional bus. So when you're doing your actual pre-trip inspection, that stuff's all familiar. The big difference is you're powering those items with a high voltage battery that's being stepped down to power those items that need to be powered versus driving off an accessory drive off an engine, whether it's mechanically, gear driven or belt driven. So this helps drivers take on the electric bus. And we do train them on the differences, right? If you go from a gas to a diesel unit, you're going to have different warning lights and different messages. That's the same with the electric bus. You're going to have different warnings and different messages. Your driving style is going to be slightly different, but very easy to adapt to. So the simplicity of the differences provides that additional confidence in being able to operate this vehicle. And again, they're working in all grade situations, all temperature situations. Again, the key benefits were laid out earlier: lower noise, better air quality, certainly a better driver experience because it is much quieter, as this was mentioned, and the funding is readily available. So roll me forward. The big different piece in this is that you do have to charge the bus. For the more than 3,000 that we have out there that are running and charging as we speak here, they are typically charging in the 2 to 8 hour window, depending upon the charge level. AC charging, they're charging in the, I'll call it the 10 kilowatt or 11.5 up to 19.2. And typically DC fast charging is in that 30 kilowatt range. Again, with this BP97, it's 194 total kilowatts, 88% of that is usable. So you have a quote fuel tank of electricity of 170 usable kilowatt hours. That's able to take that bus up to 150, but we're centered around 100 miles of range, having that additional range left for things that may happen during that day. The Type C product, you can go up to the full 77 passengers. In a Type D product, so one's the conventional, one's the transit, Type C and D, the Vision and All-American, you can go up to the full 84 passengers. The interesting thing about electric school bus is, in school bus in general, the Type C or the Vision style, the bus with the hood out in front of it, typically about 80% of all the US and Canadian deployments are Type Cs for all different fuel types. When you get into electric, it's about a 50-50 between the Cs and Ds. So there are a lot of school districts that have chosen to go with the larger capacity when they go with their EV buses. There is no real reason to or not to, but it just seems to be a trend. The propulsion system is provided by Cummins, who's very familiar with all your buses in the diesel world. It's called the PowerDrive 7000. It's set up with a Dana TM4 Sumo motor to provide you the same performance that you'd have with a diesel, 315 horsepower. A lot more torque, 2,400 pound-feet of torque, but that's simply because we have no transmission. So that's actually getting the bus to go from 0 to 65 or 70 mile an hour, single speed. So it has a 529 rear axle ratio. That rear axle again is the same 529 you'd find in a propane bus, gas bus, a diesel bus. So as these buses age and get to be 10, 15, 20, 25, some cases 30 years old, the parts availability through Cummins and Dana and the common parts that are used on other fuel types are there and available. So the bus was designed around having that lifespan that you'd expect that we at Bluebird have been providing for nearly 100 years. Roll me forward. We talked to a lot of people about charging, and then there's a good, better, best. Good is to have some AC level 2 charging somewhere between 10 and 19.2 kilowatt. Believe it or not, 80% of those 3,000 plus buses are able to live off of just single phase 220 volt, 240 volt, that the household type, and I'll call it light commercial type voltages that come in. If you had more than 5 of these buses that you added, then you're going to want to definitely consider to at least have one DC fast charger for situations where the bus didn't charge when you expected, so you can recover. Even better, and as it was mentioned, the utilities are starting to step up. When I've got several utilities, Eastern Missouri has a program going on right now. We just did one at Excel Energy in Colorado. So both sides of where Kansas City's at have utilities that are actually buying buses, but they're also buy chargers. And if you can get level 3 DC fast chargers, yes, they're more expensive. They're typically 5 to 7 times more expensive than AC charging. One, because they require 3-phase power, which in some cases it has to be brought in. If it's there, it's great. But it allows you then to take full advantage of an electric school bus and utility rates to even have a more economical electric school bus experience. So do you need it? No, you definitely don't. Good AC charging will work for you. But if you can get DC fast charging, it's all the better. And then I'll call it the 2%ers are doing a full yard planning project. And that's when you do full scale infrastructure, then you get full advantage. I will tell you, even at level 2 AC charging, the cost to push the electric bus down the road versus a diesel bus is usually somewhere between half and maybe as 1/3 the cost of pushing a diesel bus down the road. Even though diesel fuel has kind of come down in price here, particularly in the past few months, you can definitely work with your utility to end up on a cost per mile basis much better off. And then on the maintenance side, you really got washer fluid you're going to refill and wiper blades you're going to change. It has DexCool cooling. DexCool will be 30 years old next year for the battery systems and the electronics. So very familiar. That goes 5 years before you have to do any sort of flush and fill. And there is no transmission, so no transmission fluid. There's no DEF. There's no fuel filter. There is no engine oil to change. So beside being less to push down the road on electricity, the bus is actually going to give you, when they talk about that $7,000, it's going to give you huge maintenance savings per bus. So the bus is more expensive. You got to put infrastructure in, but over a 10, 12, or 15-year period of running those buses, with incentives, obviously, and grants and assistance, it gives you something that gives you a return quickly. But even without that, you can eventually, over a 10, 12, or 15-year period, come out ahead and still have a much cleaner running bus. So roll me ahead, and I think that's finishes off the overview. Oh, yeah, we did talk about cold weather, so I did include this slide. When they talk about the reduction in range in extremely cold or extremely hot weather, there are items on the bus like the actual heaters that heat the cabin, defrost the windows, and keep you warm. They will draw, up to 20 kilowatt just to heat the body. Same thing with the battery; it's going to draw some energy as well. What we've been helping people do, even just building air pressure if you have an air brake bus, is teaching them how to precondition with the charger. So on a cold morning, when you're doing your pre-trip, you can simply allow the charger to warm the battery, warm the cabin, and it does reduce that 20-mile or 30-mile range that was mentioned earlier impact. It may not completely eliminate it depending upon the temperature outside and the wind and other things that are out there thermally managing the bus itself, but that 10 to 20 or 30 miles may become 7 miles, 10 or 15 miles. So it can be dramatically reduced, giving you, much better range even in cold or extremely hot weather. So those are items that are on there. And regenerative braking, teaching drivers to form habits around, the efficiencies of this bus. And it's the same thing you would do with a diesel or gas bus to get efficiencies. You can learn how to actually recover some of the range just through using the bus itself to regenerate energy back into that battery as it's slowing down. All right, I think that's it. And thank you for your time. Look forward to questions.
Thank you so much, Brad. Really appreciate all your insight and expertise in this area. And we're going to go ahead and transition into Julie's presentation with Evergy to learn a bit more about rebate incentives.
Yeah, thanks, Taylor. Thanks, Brad. I'll get through this. I know that we're getting close to time. I want to allow enough time for questions, but just really wanted to talk about the programs that Evergy offers. So if you are an Evergy customer, we just want to make sure that you are aware of what we have that will complement, your planning for transition to electric. Next slide. Why is Evergy part of this process? You buy buses all the time. You don't really have to talk to Evergy, but when you do go electric, we do support the installation of utility infrastructure like transformers and meters to support the new electric charging that you will be needing there on site. And, we can provide technical guidance, as far as what your capabilities on the current site that you plan to do the charging, and help you understand what the capacity is, and also help you plan for infrastructure. We offer rebates and rate plans and charge management strategies that can help you optimize to the rate plans that we offer. And we can also, understanding your short-term needs for electric buses, are you really just trying out one or two? Or is this something that you are considering as you replace out future buses down the line? We can offer safe and scalable grid-friendly, upgrades to the site to support those charging installations. Early engagement is critical. You're going to be, marrying up vehicle delivery to charging installation and the utility site upgrades. And so engaging us early allows us to kind of meet you where you're at in all of your planning. And then also, we often have some ideas to kind of help bring costs down. So engage with us early, along, with the technical assistance that WRI or MEC could provide. We can also support and enable right-size charging selection and cost-effective design that aligns with your goals and the capabilities on site. Common misperceptions: utilities only supply power. We actually, for this use case, we are there and prepared to be your strategic partner. And grid readiness is essential. Next slide. There's a little bit of homework. We're talking school districts, and school districts, there's homework for you if you get started really making data-based decisions so that you feel confident in your selection of the size charger that you're going to need, or the size battery that you are going to purchase for the bus. And you can do that through fleet data. And understanding, kind of how you operate and what your usage or charging preferences are going to be on site. Do you strictly just want overnight charging? Are you going to, do you have the resources to opportunity charge midday? So really just kind of understanding your preferences and getting all of that collected along with your fleet data can really help kind of inform your planning process. Also kind of just defining goals in your budget. Also, are you wanting to install charging for other use cases other than school buses? Do you have trucks? Do you have vans? Do you have teachers that drive electric buses? And so just really kind of gathering all of that information. And we do have a dedicated team and program advisors here to support you, again, along with partnering, you know, with MEC. We're not here to replace, we're here to complement and kind of just meet you out with the planning where it makes sense and provide that site-specific guidance. Next slide. I don't really want to go through all of these steps, just really want to kind of understand that there is a lot of back and forth, customer task, Evergy task, and blue and green to get you from start to finish. And it can, you know, this process can take several months. Just wanting to set that expectation, you know, for normal construction projects, you might be contacting us if they're at step 8 when the shovel is getting close to hit the ground. With fleet and EV charging projects, really need to back it up several steps to really ensure kind of a smooth transition. Next slide. What do we have to offer? We do have up to $65,000 in rebates available for charging infrastructure for each site. We also have a very attractive rate for EV charging for business. We do have four rate areas across our Missouri and Kansas jurisdictions, but in some cases, charging super off-peak time, which would be any day of the week from midnight to 6 a.m., could be as low as 2 cents a kilowatt hour, which is really attractive to your bottom line and your fuel cost savings. We also, again, have the fleet advisory services that can kind of help you at different stages of your planning process. You may or may not have hired an electrical contractor yet. So you can contact us and we can kind of fill in those gaps as you're trying to kind of build your business plan to put in front of your school boards to get approval for funding before you start really engaging kind of those contractor resources. We have a real world example here of where we helped a roofing company. They electrified 4 vehicles at one fleet depot. That's some real savings for 4 vehicles for a small company. So kind of scale that up to, you know, a larger fleet and the savings are definitely there. The key takeaway here is utilities are strategic partners in this process. What's going on the left-hand side just kind of shows the breadth of the advisory report. This is an offering we have in Kansas. The offering in Missouri is a little different, but we can offer a lot of the same things. Again, like with partnering with MEC or WRI, we can kind of meet you where you're at and provide some of this level of support if you're a school district in Missouri as well. And this is my contact information. Our team has grown. So you're going to either be talking with me or talking with our new program manager, Zian Trober, who's listening in today. And then we also have a team of advisors or technical advisors that can support you. So please just reach out. A good way to reach us is at fas@evergy.com. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Julie. And that's it as far as the 3 presentations go. We'll hold a few more minutes for questions from anyone. Feel free to ask to any of the panelists, myself, my team, Julie, or Brad, with anything you've been thinking about this whole time. And if not, you have all our contact information and can reach out whenever you please. We really appreciate you guys taking the time to listen to what we have to say, and we hope you consider converting to electric school buses. And if you're interested, you know where to find us, and we would look forward to working with you to help bring that to life.